we'd love to get the meeting going. We're thrilled with the participation that we have tonight. It's great. I'm Tom McMahon. I'm one of the task force members tasked with pulling together a plan for a recreational project for our community. Really thrilled with all the hard work that the task force did. For those that don't know, we have a nice cross-section of people, 22 people on the committee helping us pull this plan together, working with the city, working with the Park and Rec Department, and obviously soliciting information from all of our constituents, our community. The program tonight, we'll hear from several of the committee members about the project. At the end, we'll kind of open it up for questions, so if we could hold questions in between, that would be great. But at the end of the night, our goal is to make sure we've answered all your questions, and you'll hear we're going to hope for a vote of yes at the end of the night. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dan Breen. Dan's going to talk to us a little bit about the history of the project and why we need it in our community. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dan.
Well, some of you have had to listen to me an awful lot, so you're going to have to take it again, I guess. But and I haven't worked through our new program, so this will be interesting with me trying to follow a script. But we always start with trying to explain to people why we're doing what we're doing, why the proposal, why a pool and a gym. Because if there isn't a good commanding reason as to why we're doing this, then I can understand people's objections. But we really believe, and I certainly do, and if I sound like I'm trying to sell you on something, maybe it's because I just feel passionately about it. It's just the way that I talk, and those of you know me, that's just the way I talk anyway. So I don't know if we want to start with the next slide, but the need starts with just the most general need is the health of the community. I mean, you start with the fact that we have adults and senior citizens and children that need a place for recreation. And that's true of all kinds of recreational facilities. But what we have is the two core kinds of facilities that a community needs that we have a big hole now. And we sat down as a committee and groups, several of us, and I can honestly say I've got to work with some of the finest people in Fairfield, some I didn't even know very well before. So it's been really good to work through this and to talk it over and decide what are the most important things we need. And we decided very early on there were two things that we couldn't separate. We needed them both. And this started more than a year ago before the pool went down. We knew we needed a pool, an outdoor pool. It was coming. Unfortunately, it closed before we could get this before the public. The other was we had a dramatic need for gymnasiums. In terms of explaining that, it's always easy to understand the pool because we had one. It was sitting there, we had it, it got old, it reached the point you couldn't use it anymore, it served its purpose, it was there, and we need another one. So that's a little easier for people to understand. The gymnasium side just takes a little more explanation. And I always just flip back to the history side of this. And the history side is, and I'm a good guy to do it because I was in the gym in 1971 as a young guy out of college and coming out of Parsons College here. And I saw what we had then, and I've been a part of what's happened since. Ironically, probably a lot more involved than hardly anybody because I was there for the beginnings of the real big change, and that was girls' sports. Think what we had. We built our last gym was what is now the middle school. And I might say, even then, it wasn't entirely adequate for what we needed it for. I still remember feeling a little odd that while the A team practiced going up and down the floor, the B team more or less watched most of the time. But that's all we had room for. I remember that bothered me at the time, but that's all. I'm just a young coach, and that's what we had. But all we had was boys basketball then. Essentially, that used the gym except for the PE classes. So I'm not here to cast any blame on what and who did what in the past, that we ended up with the facilities that weren't built through time. But if you've lived here long enough, you know we've gone through several options and plans to add gymnasiums for different reasons at different times, and they just have never materialized. They just didn't happen. I don't want to go through the whole history of that, but we have what we have. So since 1972, what began to happen? Well, girls' sports were added. That is a tremendous surge of need for gymnasium. It means not only basketball, it meant volleyball, it means softball. And yes, softball uses that gym all winter long and would do it more if they could. It means soccer. I've had the soccer people contact me. Thank goodness. We've tried to get into a gym. They have no hope of getting into the gym. We've added 7th grade sports. We didn't have 7th grade sports in Fairfield. None. We do now. We've added all the senior recreation. In 1970s and 60s, when we last built the gym, you didn't have seniors walking like they do now. And we don't have a place for that. Adult leagues, young people want something to go do and play. They want to play games, not just have a fitness center. And there's no place for them because the schools have been simply overrun with all these activities that keep getting added. There's all kinds of other activities that even keep coming that most people don't even think about. I always laugh about, I don't know what pickleball is, but people want pickleball at the rec center. We have indoor archery. We have dance and drill. I mean, I could rate a whole list. I always say Jeff Corright out here must have the toughest job since the beach master at D-Day, trying to figure out who gets to use the gym, leave everybody happy, and sort it out. So what does all that mean? It means that we have all kinds of kids that don't get to do things because they have to wait. And it's not just inconvenience, it means they don't get to do it. It means because you can't have the practice. We've started with a youth basketball situation. We had nothing 4 years ago. I couldn't believe it. We had nothing. Well, I found out we had nothing because it was a nightmare to even get a gym to practice a team. You certainly couldn't do it with all kids at all levels. And we tried to change that. We've got 12 teams now. We've added 12 teams in the last 4 years. Where do you suppose they practice? Well, we've got kids practicing through school situations and through youth leagues, and they start at 6:15 in the morning. And we got kids in gyms till 8 o'clock at night. And that's the ones who could get in. That has nothing to do with the people who never got in or the leagues that never got started or the adult activities that they wish they had. As a former teacher, I get to use my own opinion on that. That's not right. A 7th grade girl shouldn't have to go to practice at 6:15 in the morning and then be done with their activities after school. Because after school, we got to take care of our kids. Maybe it's more me than other people in the communities, but we haven't had any place for our kids to go after school. That's not right. When school ends, where do they have to go? When the winter comes, they have nowhere to go. And heaven help the poor kids that don't have families, who have mothers that can pick them up and take them and have the means and the money to take them to other places, to go to pools, or to pay for programs that the Park and Rec can have for them, whether it's trampoline or dance and all the things I even do with my own children. But they don't have a place to just go with adult supervision and somewhere to play. We need to fix it. So that's what we're trying to do. We get into the whole gymnasium thing later as far as describing it more to you. But the other part that I know they wanted me to mention, I'm sure we're going to get to it later, but now is the time. I just can't believe we're still wanting to wait again for something we have to have. How many, you have the economic benefit side of this. And I can't see waiting. The human side is all I need, but the economic development side is a big deal too. I've had the employers in town have told me, the Manufacturers Association, I've talked to them. They want those wellness programs. They want to retain their employees and attract them. That's a big deal. I thought, my first thought was, that'd be great to retain, attract and retain employees. How about attracting and retaining some businesses? Or how about attracting and retaining families, young families? See, I've done that twice. I don't know what. I was raising children in the 70s. I'm doing it again. Because I'd like to see them stay here. I'd like to have all the reasons possible where this is a great place to raise children. And we do have an excellent community. I'm not trying to beat up on the community, but this went by us, that's all. It went by us. And it doesn't matter whose fault it is, we never even discussed that. That doesn't matter now. The issue is, what are we going to do now? And of course you get to things like the interest rates. They're at historic lows. That's a good thing. Contractors looking for work. That's a good thing. The engineer that we're working with said, if these things even get delayed a year, it's another 15%. That's just the way the world will work now. It'll get more expensive, and the need is not going away. It's not going away. How many families do we have to lose, or how many businesses didn't stay here? I don't know. It's hard to quantify those things. The schools. I always think like a school teacher because that's what I did all those years. I don't know if the number's exactly right, but if it's $6,000 a kid in state aid, let's just use that as an example, 2.5 kids for the average family, that's $15,000 a year, times 13 years they'd be in school, one family, one time. What if you had 10 families that lived here because we had better facilities, or one business that located here because they had what they thought their kids needed? So I can't promise anything about that, but I can certainly imagine that this would help build the tax base, that it would help give money to our schools. And of course, in terms of county taxation, and city taxation, and all the things that will have to help fund these things, that base grows too, or at least that's certainly part of the goal. But I always go back to the human side. And actually, see, I always go back to the same thing. I'll end with this. When somebody says wait, I always have to think, the first thing always comes to my mind, when you're 10 years old, you're only 10 years old once. They don't need this later. They need it now. If I had a mother and she needed somewhere to walk, because that's the kind of activity that she had to exercise, don't tell me to wait. She needs it now. She doesn't need it later. She needs it now. So we're going to do it. I know we are. And I have great confidence in the community. The question is, can we do it now? And this is the first step. This is what we begin with, is a $3 million vote. And yes, we're looking at a $10 million project. Can we do it for less? I don't know. Maybe. But we got a big task of us. And we have a lot of people who are going to have to work awfully hard. We have a lot of people who are going to have to be awfully generous in order to make this work. And people say, boy, it is going to be hard to do. Of course it's going to be hard to do. But that doesn't mean we're not going to do it. So it's a confidence thing. I really think we can. I think it'll really help our schools. I think it'll help our businesses. And my number one thing I always go back, it'll really help the kids. And that's just the why for me. The particulars of what we have projected and so forth is another matter, and I'll defer to the other people on that. But so I'll get off the stage here, and if I went too long, I'm sorry. I just have a hard time holding myself back on this. Jane McMahon, who has been with us from day one on the committee and has done a tremendous amount of work. And
we'll do it at the end.
Okay.
So in addition to what Dan is just saying, is the fact that some of our youth, the movie theater and the skating rink have just recently closed, and so that's another addition for the needs that we have. One of the things that I just wanted to talk about was the actual pool. And in this, they are small, they are around, and if people want to, I'm going to bring mine up a little bit closer, because I'm just going to talk to you about the swimming pool itself and what work we've done to this point. So it was requested that the pool get placed back in its current location, back at O.B. Nelson, because a lot of the parents felt like they could ride their bike. The kids could ride their bikes. They could get there. They knew how. They knew that area. It's a nice, safe neighborhood and so forth. Some of the things that we looked at was very definitely cost. And some of the things, when you look at this pool, it doesn't, you're not thinking much, but there is a lot This arched area is a what's called zero depth. And so it's just like when you're walking into the ocean, it gets deeper and deeper as you go. These lines are actually going to be marked on the bottom of the pool so that a parent or child could tell what the depth was. This was also important for like state, federal regulation. You know, you have to have that ability to go in. Handicap accessible. We do have lap lanes, but with the diving boards at the far ends, we did keep a slide and, you know, potentially kind of like a water walk. It's a floating walkway, and they're like pads that they can stand on. These have not been fully determined. However, we were trying to look at our budget and trying to bring down what we could afford. For example, some of the layouts that they had shown us had a lot of concrete around them. So we had them really centralize the pool, so we had less concrete. Another thing was, at one point we thought, well, you know, we have the diving board that's 1 meter. Currently, why don't we have one that's a 3 meter? That would be exciting for the kids. Well, that one option of going to the 3 meter diving board puts us at higher insurance payments and a deeper, the depth of the pool has to be deeper. So therefore, we, you know, are suggesting to the community that we stay at 2 1 meter pools, or 1 meter diving boards. The slide, that was a big thing that people had talked about, they liked. It was something that they were used to. A popular item is this, you know, walkway. Again, that can be changed. In the zero depth, I'll move on. There are different kinds of, and this is where the community will need some inputs from the community as far as what they would like to see. And there are bubblers, there are forts that, you know, have water guns, there are seats, benches that you can put in there, there are, and also toddler type things. So we're trying to address all ages and stages with the pool. Lots of shade structures. We're also hoping that we get some folks to volunteer to build some additional shade structures so we can lower the cost there. So this is all I'm doing for you now is showing the work that we've done up to this point and to come up with that. And I think we're going to talk about the dollar amount at another time. And now, Ken Daly, if you would also talk about the gym space.
As you can see from the diagram, we've moved the situation of trying to put the gym and the pool in one location to separate them off. And the reason was that is quite simple. We have quite an elaborate facility that we've been building over the years over near Roosevelt. So it seemed to be a synergy to put that facility in that area, especially because certain amounts of land are available. It would be nice to have all of it in the same area. It just isn't going to work. The facility itself is, think of it as multi-purpose. It's not a shrine to basketball, sorry about that. It is a multi-purpose area. 3 courts with a track area around the outside, and the track area will also allow for bleachers to be put in for competitive events. But then they'll be able to be pulled off for practices, games, etc. So the facility itself has one at this end is the locker rooms, concession stand, and a meeting room and an office. But then there's possibility of expansion here so that if we decide to put weight training facility for that would be more specific to this area, possibility for expansion even moving in either this direction or this direction. So we have possibility for expansion because of the structure of the building. But it will be basically a multi-purpose area. And the floors, we're still debating over fork, whether we use a wooden floor or we use a synthetic floor, and there are pros and cons that are going back and forth. But that's basically the structure of the facility.
Yeah, so we'll have Jody Kerr come up. Jody heads the finance and fundraising arm of the task force, so we'll have Jody talk about that.
The points that I wanted to make this evening to this group, primarily, they're pretty condensed because financing can get pretty complex, but as you heard Jane mention and Ken, I mean, that group has worked very hard to try to make this total project affordable, but yet meet the needs that Dan has definitely pointed out to all of us. And so, and also add the modern features to the pool to try to bring it up to today's standards of what, the users expect of that kind of a facility. So what they've done is they've worked very hard, and trust me, there have been many, many, many versions of these projects out there, boiling it down to a total of about a $10 million project. So that's, I think someone, Dan mentioned that earlier, that's the total cost that we're looking at. So a couple months ago, the Ways and Means Committee of the City Council hashed out kind of what they felt from a city perspective was affordable to them to help pay for this project. And they had a lot of factors to consider, but ultimately the City Council did vote unanimously, took the recommendation of Ways and Means to appropriate a $3 million bond that they would be willing to use to fund this project. And so that's the part that is on the ballot in November that the city residents will be voting for, is that $3 million bond referendum. So that's kind of the key to everything in getting the ball rolling. Aside from that, obviously, there's, 10 minus 3 leaves 7. There's a pretty big gap there. So we've got a lot of different resources and sources that we're considering. Obviously, what's going to be very key is to get the support of the entire community, the entire county. So we'll be looking at private fundraising, in addition to trying to work with the county in some capacity to try to identify ways that the county can share. Many of us on the committee actually are county residents, and we've all had children or have children that have been active in various activities throughout the years, utilizing the facilities that exist now, the outdoor pool that existed for years, and so these facilities really are utilized very widely among the entire county. So that's an important part to remember, is that we do need to look to the support of not only the city of Fairfield residents, but also beyond those boundaries. So again, the private fundraising will also be looking to identify some potential grant opportunities. And some of the grant opportunities that exist out there, and we haven't done a lot of very specific research on that yet, but the ones we are aware of, they typically do require a show of support by local government and county government and all of those types of entities involved in order to even be considered for those grants. And so that's also going to be another important component. And again, the solicitations of the donations will be looking at both individuals and also corporations and businesses and that sort of thing. So the committee will be working to identify places that we can go to ask and try to hope that everyone's very generous. The city historically in this community has been very generous when it comes to a very important project, and we're hoping they'll be the same when we come around to ask. One thing I want to talk about, the $3 million that the city, this $3 million bond, just so everyone understands what that really means to an individual if that is passed. That $3 million, then bonds are sold, and it's the city's responsibility to pay those back over a period of time. So the repayment schedule that they've received an estimate on from Piper Jaffray would be a 20-year bond payback, and using some conservative interest rates and factoring in all the repayment schedules, principal and interest, it would impact basically a residential homeowner by roughly 39 cents per thousand valuation. So on $100,000 of taxable valuation, you're looking at $39 per year for 20 years that your property tax would increase. Again, based on the estimates that we've come up with at this point. So $3.25 a month, for 20 years, I think it's definitely doable, or it should be for most. Again, that's the residential properties, and that's how they would be impacted. Also, our committee is working on developing some pro forma budgets, because that would be the next question. We've had that question from City Council. It's one thing to build it, but then from that point forward, you have to operate it. And so our committee is also working on developing some pro forma budgets to identify what the ultimate bottom line would be for operating these two facilities going forward. Most of you might realize that the outdoor pool did not operate at a break even. It didn't make a profit. Those types of facilities do lose money every year. It's basically a community amenity. And so we don't expect it to make money or maybe even sustain itself. But what we're looking at is making sure that those pro forma budgets are still affordable and can stay within the realm of what has existed in the past with the facility that they've had. So that's all I have, I guess, for my part right now. And I'm going to turn over to Michael Howley.
I'm co-chair of the Public Relations Committee, the task force. Essentially, we began with education. We wanted to let people know what this project is and what it isn't. And then that turns into dialogue, where we're very open to hearing feedback and to receiving questions people might have. I don't know if you saw my letter to the editor in last week's Ledger. A lady had thought that this project would affect the city's ability to fund ongoing sewer repair work and such. So I'm a city councilman, so I was able to get the information and disseminate that this will not affect that in any way. The revenue stream to pay back this $3 million is through general obligation bonds, which will affect property tax. That's the revenue stream, which is separate from the revenue stream for the sewer upgrades that the city is very much required to make in the next 20 years. We want to hear concerns, we want to hear questions. We have the answers. If we don't have the answers, we'll get the answers. There's no taboo or touchy subject. We want to talk about everything. We know there's a concern from the school board in terms of next spring's vote. For that, we want to talk about that openly. There's been some confusion that the new gym was going to replace the existing Roosevelt facility. That's not the case. All the facilities that are currently at the Roosevelt site will remain. This gymnasium space will be an addition. So when we get around to opening it up to questions, just understand that there's nothing that you can't ask us. We are completely transparent and involved and open to. Go ahead and open it up. Oh, all right, let's do it.
Okay, I don't want to pour water on anybody's fire of enthusiasm about this, but number one, I have been denied admittance to the rec center as it exists now because they have no provision for people who cannot afford to pay for it. And I think that's a disgrace for people who need the exercise in order to heal, who really need it, like people on Medicaid who are disabled. There is no provision at all, either at the MUM facility, except I think there was 1 day a year and 1 day a year at the rec center, which is not, a feasible situation 1 day a year. That's not going to heal anybody. So you're talking about senior citizens and handicapped facilities, but you're not talking about the fact that there are people who cannot afford anything other than the bare minimal necessities, and even those are not affordable, meaning that their life is in danger over maybe immediately or over slightly long term, short term. And I think that is wrong, and I think that needs to be very much addressed. What are you going to do? I mean, just say this is just for the upper middle class and the wealthy, and it doesn't, and the poor people don't have are not part of this community. That's number one. Number two, it's been a number of years that the city has been refusing to participate. I was in the what is it called? The block grant for housing rehab for people who cannot afford to maintain their own home that they own, who are too poor to be able to do the maintenance that is required to live in a home. And our former city administrator, he said to me, "Oh, sure, we could do the block grant if we pay for the whole thing." Well, it's not a matter of paying for the whole thing. The city would only be expected to pay for part of it. But this is something that comes out of Ottumwa. It's a program that has been turned down by the city for a number of years. It was done for 1 year for a few houses, and then it was dropped. And if there is money for this, which I consider an extreme luxury, we have at least 2 rec centers in Fairfield. We have the Roosevelt and the one at NUM, and people can pay to go in there and do what if they can afford it, they can go. There is a beach for the summer where people can go swimming. So an outdoor swimming pool is really not necessary as far as I can see. I grew up in a lake, with a lake, and I loved it, and I still absolutely love it. It's wonderful. And this lake is super clean. And to say that these super luxuries are, needed. What about the people who are not going to make it in Fairfield, who are not going to survive? Where is the community where those people are concerned? And to say that if somebody's house is collapsing for years on end, and there's a block grant that is refused, we can't participate in this block grant because it would cost the city money. Well, if this can be done, if this can even be considered, then certainly the housing rehab block grant should be considered. So as things now stand, unless I find out otherwise, I am opposed to this entire proposal.
Can I ask you the first question first?
Sure.
So, with any city facility that offers a service, let's say if it wasn't a city park and rec, let's say it was a private YMCA, there are going to be fees to use the facility. That's just how these things are done. It's the business side of it. Instead of using tax money to make it free. So we can try to keep the facility cost as low as possible for memberships. I know Derek works hard on this all the time. He wants everyone to be able to use it. I grew up very poor. My family couldn't afford certain things. That's economic reality. When you build a facility like this, and you are too.
Well,
so
for now.
There's definitely a safety net in our society.
No, there isn't.
There is.
There
You're
is
not,
everything
you've got a home,
federal
Carol,
and
and
state
you're
levels
well
going
fed.
down.
So let's just continue.
Yeah.
So we build these things and we bring a stronger economy for all of us. That supports all of us. That makes our economy stronger. You invest to build the economy. You spend money to make money. Very much a business model. But the city does the same thing. So I hear you and I feel for you. You know, we talk a lot about these things. But this is not a luxury item. This is something that, I'd say, the vast majority of our community will use.
Michael, can I ask you next question? So I just have a question about, would physical therapy be able to utilize the outdoor pool for their patients? Is that something?
It would be much easier in this pool with the zero debt entry. You wouldn't require the
right, because it's
crane.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So is that something that they used to do with the outdoor pool? Do you remember?
Derek, would you speak to that?
Christie? No, they really didn't because it wasn't handicap accessible. It was too hard to get people in.
So there would be another venue for residents to utilize the pool. Somebody that's undergoing water therapy. I just want to bring that up. The other question is when you're talking about concession stands at the gym, I'm assuming that they'll be NEMS compliant with healthy snacks.
Oh yeah, we're going blue zone. So
Right.
It's going to be bananas and apples.
So I just wanted to, make that comment. What? Kids eat at the pool.
Go ahead. Just a couple questions, Mike. And then I may be able to address one of your concerns. We should be getting close, Mayor. We should be getting close to the end time for the indoor pool. Wasn't that a 20-year note? And I think we're like 3 or 4 years out maximum.
You're probably right. It's probably about the timetable.
So we could inform the folks that that will be coming off of their tax rolls, or off the property tax at some point in the relative near future. Question I had regarding the gyms,
Is there an arrangement with the schools so that there is not a cost burden to use those facilities for those practice times? I mean, if we're trying to alleviate some of that issue, and then to voice the burden into the school district to budget for those things. I just had a question in that regard.
Well, Jeff might be better able to answer that, but the short answer is we've had a very long-standing relationship between the Park and Rec and the schools for years of sharing and working this out over time. So that would be continue to be a work in progress, but Jeff might be better to answer that.
Yeah, it was, Mr. Eastburn, myself, and Mr. Sadoff met, and, talked about things like that, and there were some ideas, some assumptions, I guess you would say, and, the schools, hard to speak, kind of get itself out of some budget issues, so. The school district would favor something like big time, obviously, for the advantage it would have for the school and community, as far as being able to collect a significant amount of money in the near future. Difficult, but maybe something that can be done in the...
Well, I think also for the community, this is a personal thing, but I wanted to see a baseball complex for quite some time, and Little League does a great job, and Babe Ruth is doing a great job. I see this as an opportunity to bring other communities here to play basketball, for example, to generate revenue. We are traveling right now every Sunday to Wellman, play in a fall league. There isn't any reason why we can't bring that here instead.
That's one of the things we talked about. Certainly, you'd have the space and facility to do that. And,
right.
And whether it's a league situation or tournaments, on the weekend, you can make a lot of money, and not just at the site, but if it's a weekend tournament, people staying in town, having people come in from out of town. That's something we talked about.
And up there in Wellman, for example, they use both the high school and the Y that's just out north of town. So, in regards to yours, I sit on an organization called Regional Housing Trust Fund. And on the income guidelines, you might be eligible for up to $6,000, and it would be considered a loan, but it would be deferred. It would be considered a grant. So I would ask you to contact Tracy in advance.
If I stay long enough, but I've been here for 32 years, and I've been trying to leave Fairfield for like 20-something years because of the problems I've had here.
There is the program that is available, and we run it through FIA and through Tracy.
And I would have to pay it back as...
No, not if you qualify, it would be an outright grant.
No, it has to be paid back.
Maybe we can take this one offline. So do we have other questions? Yes, go ahead.
The $3 million, if that passes through, how far will that get you into this project?
3 of approximately 10.
How will it be used to get the project launched?
Well, a lot of grants first require public support or considered a match. So getting that will give the fundraising group confidence to go after some of these corporate grants and other grants. Private donations.
Jay, I would just say it's really just a stepping stone. The $3 million, the vote is very important to us. And quite honestly, Jay, I'm saying we need a strong voter support demonstrating, obviously what we see in the project, but it is just a stepping stone. And until we get closer to 10 million, and we're not spending the $3 million. We're going to raise, this is one project, we're going to raise the money for all of it and get it going when we get there. Is that your question?
Yeah, it tells me what you're going to do with the money and how much of it will be gone without really having a project yet.
Okay, none will be gone without having a project. Go ahead, Dick.
Yeah, the question on the $3 million, so that's a bond. You probably won't be able to spend any of the $3 million until you raise your 10. Is that correct?
That's what we're thinking.
Right, in other words, you probably won't be able to. I had a call from a lady out in the county today, and her question was, will my youth be able to use this facility in the county if the county doesn't vote it in? Or will there be a different fee? And I said, well, we kind of haven't crossed that bridge 100% yet, I don't think. But any comments on that?
Yeah, I'd love to comment.
Yeah,
And then, because I'm not the politician.
If we could, you know, Dick, honestly, when we look at a community, currently we have a community program, and we see the community, Dick, you know, I see the community stretching south into Van Buren. You know, I use the facilities now, Roosevelt Center, the pool, and the number of people coming up from Van Buren County is pretty significant. A lot, and we're not charging anything different. It is a community event. And for me, of course, I see the community as being much broader than Fairfield, broader than Jefferson County, really. All those outlying areas are going to help us.
Excluding
Roberts Park isn't here,
Now
but
you'll need the politician's answer.
Oh, I get the other politicians. Okay. I see us as one community.
absolutely.
You know, we're 16,000. So you've got 10, 11,000 that's going to get to vote on the bond issue. You've got the other little small towns. And then you've got rural Jefferson County, about 4,500 or something like that. I want to see the 4,500 people vote. I definitely want to see them vote. Because I think it's important that they have some buy-in on this. But, so what are your plans? Can you tell me yet on when you think you'll get asked us to put it on the ballot? And what's your vision on that? And maybe.
Can I go with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. No, great question, Dick. I mean, we clearly, as you heard Jody say, when we think about raising another 7 million, right? We're talking 3, 7. I think we absolutely need the whole county involvement. And I don't know exactly what it's going to mean for the county. In the back of my mind, I have a number. And we're going to ask you and all of the supervisors to think about what your budget looks like and what do you think you can help us go to the total electorate with. And then if we need a vote for it, then we'll have a vote. If you think you have money within your system that you can allocate to it on a 3 or 5 year basis. Everybody's budget's tight. I get it. I get it. This isn't going to be easy. We know that.
It won't be, that's
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
We don't care about easy. Nothing's ever easy. It is important. I think it's important that we try to sell it to the community as a whole. And I don't want Lee thanks, but I don't know what Steve thinks, but no what Steve thinks. But proportion-wise, it needs to be figured out proportion-wise. So everybody has about the same amount into the game. And then the industries and everybody else knows how much to step up, how much more money we need. You know. I was late tonight because I was hauling grandkids from activities. You know, so it doesn't
Thank
stop.
you.
It doesn't just stop with your children.
No.
It goes to our grandchildren and our grandchildren. So it's important.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Well, Dick, I would officially welcome your participation from the county. I think it would be wonderful to do, to have a joint project. And I know that the incubation of this thought and concept really came through the city because initially we were trying to look forward to replacing our pool, and this grander vision came out. I agree with what Tom is saying, that we don't think a lot about who's using our facilities. We know that we're a bigger community than just the 9,500 people who live within the city limits, and I think we'll continue to do that. But the realities are, from year to year, we have budgets to make. And at this point, as Jody had pointed out, we don't have the real pro forma numbers yet on what it's going to cost to run the facilities. So it could come down to having some different levels of memberships. I wouldn't say that that's not necessarily going to happen, but certainly if there was full county participation, it wouldn't happen. So I think that would be a good way to answer that question. But as far as the way we operate now, we don't. But if it is a significant increase in our budget on an annual basis, we're going to have to look at everything, and that may be one of the things that we would look at would be a tiered membership. But it's not in any plans right now.
My only other one little thought is transparency. I mean, tell it up front. Let everybody know exactly what's going on, what it's going to cost them. I was glad to hear the figures on the $100,000 valuation, what the taxes would be in the city. I really think people appreciate the fact that you tell them up front the transparency. Really tell them what's happening so they aren't worried about, well, they're kind of doing this, but they might do this behind the back, you know. And I just think it's important that you get it all on the table and talk about it, discuss it.
And we hope
That's
we're
just my
doing
2 cents.
it.
And I know you have been, it sounds like you have, but I put my 2 cents in.
No, Dick, it's great advice, and we hope we're being very transparent. You know, there are some things, Jody talked about, what does a budget for the gymnasium look like? We're still, I mean, just real honest, we're trying to get our arms around the revenue side of it. Expense side, we can kind of get our arms around there, right? It's the revenues. You know, the design includes us having revenues. We're going to have events. We have to get there. We've been given advice on the pool. You know, we can look back and say historically the pool has cost the city net out about $50,000 a year. We can see that. But with the design that the committee has come up with the help of Burbach, we expect revenues really to increase significantly. I think we are creating a facility that's going to allow for much higher use than we've seen. So we're expecting a burden to be a lot less. Still trying to get our arms around that. We want to be transparent because we think we have good news coming. So do you want me to give you a number now? I'm kidding.
You can give me a number anytime.
Yeah, I know. Great comments. Thank you.
Well, that reminds me, one concern I heard was, what if we vote yes and then the city decides we're going to borrow more? The language of the vote is up to 3 million cap. There is no adding on later. That's the vote. That's the measure A. So it's very straightforward. And you heard the $39 extra in property tax for a $100,000 assessed home. That's pretty solid at this point, given no changes. Lee, you reminded me that actually our levy rate for the city went down a little bit last year. A little bit. For the first time in a long time. So as far as property taxes, we're trying to obviously give relief when possible. And when something like this comes up. And how do you fund a big project like this? Well, everyone pitches in a little bit. And that's how you get it done. And that's how the bondage and the payback works, is we all pay a little bit in property taxes and then we get there. But we also need people like you to give us private donations.
Thank you. You put your hand up right away.
I work for Walker, so it'd be a little bit.
We'll talk to Ross.
I just want folks to know, I agree in principle with Dick as far as that part of it goes. I'm one of those parents that it seems like for 100 years we did the 6:15 in the morning thing. And prayed for when they would make varsity so we didn't and I agree with Dan when Dan came over to talk. In fact, I told Dan, from a personal perspective, from a personal standpoint, I'm for the project. Like I said, I would love to see us be able to do something like Burlington did with their Recplex. They generate tons of revenue, and there is economic development there. But I also agree with Dick. I think that it has to go before the folks. I don't think we've got the revenue in our budget. I just don't think it's there. We keep things pretty close to the vest. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't like to see it happen as far as that part of it goes.
Okay.
I hope I word this question correctly. So you're going for the bond, the $3 million bond, and you say you're not gonna do anything though until the full 10 million is raised, correct? Is that what I'm hearing? Why? Why wouldn't you start on one of the, like the pool or something? I guess I don't understand why you need the entire 10 million. I mean, if the community sees that you're trying to build the outdoor pool or doing something, isn't it to go like build it, they'll come kind of situation? I guess my personal opinion is I want a pool. Okay, I want a pool really bad. I mean, I've had 2 kids, and I have another family too, Dan. So, I'm raising, and I just think I have to go to Mount Pleasant. So I guess I don't understand why you guys would wait on something like that when you have this community that has, all you hear about is an outdoor pool in this community. I mean, you hear it tons. I don't understand why you would wait for the incomplete 10 million to do both of the projects.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think, first off, we recognize that the stepping stone, 3 million, is coming from a city vote. And 7 million is coming from fundraising from some direction. We think a significant portion of it's going to be from businesses, individuals. And at this point, as with the vote, we're saying we're doing both projects, right? That's what the vote is. We're going to do both projects. And it would be very difficult for us to do one project, whichever way you go, one project when you've sold it on both. And I think if you're going to change, so let's, go out and say we only raise 9.5 million. Well, I think we'll get the other $500,000 somewhere, right? At some point, we'll pull a trigger and say we're ready to go. But if you've reached out and you have made a tremendous donation, you wanted one thing, the pool, I hear that. But they build a gymnasium, you're going to be upset first, right? So our plan is, we're announcing the plan. We're saying this is what we're attempting to do. We have to see how it's going to go. If we get close enough, then we'll make the decision to start construction. But if we start construction on partial projects, we haven't helped anybody.
I understand that. Was there a way to ask the community maybe what they would prefer, or what is the way? Because I know that on bonds, I think sometimes, pool only. I don't know all the criteria, but
I think we're going to know when we start asking people for money and we start going out for the projects. We're going to hear that. I think that's when we're going to know. Because I can tell you, for as many conversations I've heard your side of it, I'm hearing the other side. So I'm hearing it both ways. So, and all that tells me is the task force said we need both projects, and we need to do it. We need to do them both. Yeah, go ahead.
The question I have is, I understand if the bond thing goes through, then the city has said, okay, $3 million. Those will be put, now will those be put out for sale upon the completion of the vote? Or will they be held to be put out for sale until you have raised the money?
They'll be held until we're ready to do the project.
Because
it wouldn't make sense to take the money.
Because I heard that question in the neighborhood that, they said, well, what are they going to do with that money if they don't get the rest of it?
Right, and we're not going to take it until we know we're doing the project. Yeah, Jake.
What time frame are you looking at for actually digging the first shovel?
My answer to that is, as soon as we have enough money raised to start digging, we're going to do it. We would love to start next spring. We would love to start next spring.
Would you be able to raise that kind of money, given the bond passes in November, to be able to start digging in the spring? Could you raise that kind of fundraising that quickly?
We hope so. It's if it's St. Mary's Church, the answer was yes.
I was also thinking of, was it Arts and Communities Convention Center?
Yeah, and so we're just going to have to see. I mean, we know it's an ambitious goal. We think it's an ambitious goal, as you heard Dan say. We're going to have, mean, we're gonna ask everybody. Everybody is gonna get asked to help.
And some of us have been working on this for over a year now, and we're not gonna wanna drag it out any longer than we have to. So I mean, from a fundraising perspective, we're gonna hit it hard. And we're not gonna drag it out. So we're gonna go hard at it and find out what we can do very quickly. I mean, and then we'll know what we can do, the timeline from there.
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's obviously we're trying to go as fast as we can. Because we would love to start in the spring. That would be a great goal. Good. Other questions? Yeah. Yeah. It's okay. That's why we're here.
Based on the fundraising that occurred for the Arts and Convention Center, do you have an idea of what you can expect from corporations and the community for donations?
I can't answer that. There are two different projects with two different bases of needs. Now, Jay, personally I supported the convention center too, right? And obviously I think this is important. I've heard Dan's speech enough that, I'm enjoying the Kool-Aid. We need to do it now. And it is going to take a broad community support to get this done. And is it going to happen in a week? Only if you write a great big check. We don't know where it's going to come from. I've told this story so many times, but as you know, when we built the church, we got some wonderful surprises that we never anticipated. And quite honestly, I'm hoping for some surprises here. And I think they'll happen. We live in this community that has been one of the most giving, charitable communities in Iowa, in the Midwest. And so I really am, I don't know where those surprises are going to come from. Might be somebody sitting in this room. But we're going to need a couple of big surprises. And then we're going to need a lot of participation from everybody else. So is it going to be easy? No. Can we do it? Absolutely. I firmly believe we can get it done.
I just want to add one thing. Some of the feedback starts to sound at some point like, what are you going to do about it? Meaning us. And I always think, no, you're misunderstanding. We're here asking for your help. We need help to do this. It's very obvious. If somebody wanted the gym or the pool to start tomorrow, they can write a check. Or 100 people can write a check. It's in front of us to do. You can't start something with this ambitious and important to do without knowing, and I'm not the kind of person, a lot of you know me, I don't ask for help much. But we need help here. I lose sleep over this rather consistently. And it's not the vote I'm worried about. It's not the vote, it's all that has to be done. And this might sound corny to you, but and back to what I worry about, there's a whole generation of kids that are depending on this getting done. I'm not used to failing them, where they want this, and then we've got to do it. So this is clear. We're asking for help. We need help from all concerned. And I know almost everybody in the room, and I know most of you want to. We just got to be optimistic enough and aggressive enough to do whatever is necessary to make this work. There's just too much at stake. So I don't see it as just the vote. That just got to start us, and then let's do it. Just the way I look at it.
Any other questions? Well, again, thank you for all of you being here. We really appreciate it. If I could I get the task force, everybody on the task force to stand up? I mean, it is a great group of people that I've gotten to work with, and I'm thrilled. Come on, Terry. Well, again, thank you for being here. We have brochures. We have pledge cards. If you would like to make a pledge tonight. And lawn signs out there. So, again, thank you, everybody.